It looked for all the world as though we'd get another McLaren victory today in Sochi, but the rain gods decided that it was time for Sir Lewis Hamilton to get his 100th win in Formula One. Welcome back to the Grid Talk podcast, everybody. This is episode number 138, where we'll be reviewing the 2021 Russian Grand Prix. I'm your host, George Howson, and joining me today we have Phil Mathew from the Grip Strip podcast.
Hello.
Aaron Harper from the Five Red Lights podcast.
Hello.
And Jawad Yakub from the Hit the Apex podcast.
Howdy.
So, lads, let's start with today's race winner, Sir Lewis Hamilton, claiming his 100th win in the sport, his fifth win around Sochi. In the end, he won by over 50 seconds, but Phil, that does not tell the story at all. He had a fantastic battle today with Lando Norris for the majority of the race, and he had to really make some ground up after a poor start.
Yeah, it was a crazy race for sure, George. I mean, it wasn't the usual. It was the usual kind of Russian Grand Prix after the start, DRS trains and the whole bit, but there was so much action that went on. It was Lewis trying to get back up after the block. Not a great start, got back up, got blocked, came back, having to do all that. Max Verstappen coming from tailback. You have Lando and Carlos battling each other. Carlos having to pit and starting the whole, well, he didn't start it, but it started that whole train of guys with the undercuts and how that affected the race. I mean, it was really an interesting race. It was not what most people, I would assume, expected, including me. I also didn't expect Lewis, on the way things were going this weekend, to get this victory. I think I'd said it on my show, or I think I might have said it here jokingly, that it's like, oh yeah, Lewis is probably going to go and get number 100 in Mother Russia. Well, he did, but it wasn't straightforward. And you could tell that it hasn't sunk in. Of course, it's too early. But what he had to do to race against Lando, he caught him on dry tires, but couldn't get past him. Same way as he struggled behind Daniel Ricciardo earlier in the race. And then that rain really just threw the dice. It was like a dice roll, and Bono and company made the right call and gave Lewis the opportunity to get those inters and go get that 100th victory, which was unbelievable, to say the least.
It really was, yeah. I couldn't believe my eyes what I was seeing with this race. It was something else. Hamilton really had to work for it today. Obviously, he qualified, I think, in fourth. He had to work his way up from about, I think he was sixth or something like that, behind Ricciardo in the early stages. The pace shone through in the end, and he ended up catching Lando Norris, and he didn't want to come in. He didn't want to come in for the intermediate tires, but Mercedes, they insisted on it. They made the right call, Jawad, and that was crucial to the race at the end of the day. And it's massive for Hamilton because he's back in the championship lead again.
Yeah, 2 point swing in Hamilton's favor after that. And yeah, you say Mercedes made the right call at the end of the day, and Hamilton didn't want to come in, but it was what got them to win ultimately. I think if the rain had stayed away, then there was that chance that they wouldn't have passed the McLaren, because down the straights where, Hamilton would have had DRS, the McLaren was still quicker. We saw that in the opening stint with Lewis behind Daniel Ricciardo as well. But yeah, it's Mercedes. You kind of don't give them enough credit sometimes when they do get these strategy calls right, but then when they do make the wrong call, they get absolutely plastered. But they did a good job, and this shows why they're 7-time Constructors World Champions and gunning for an 8th this year.
Absolutely, yeah. Big day for them in the Constructors' Championship as well. They've made some big gains on Red Bull too. Now, normally I wouldn't talk about the guy who finished in 7th this early in the show, Aaron, but I feel like I've got to make an exception this time. Lando Norris, he got overtaken by Carlos Sainz at the start after starting on his first pole position in the sport. He eventually overtook him about 20 laps or so into the race, and from then he just powered on. Even with Hamilton hounding him in a much faster car, he just looked comfortable. Hamilton couldn't get close to him. And it was just that one decision, to stay out. You got to feel for the guy, because it went from damp to monsoon conditions in a lap, and it was just impossible for him.
Yeah, it was it was such a mature drive. And if you just start with the first lap, it would have been quite easy for him to panic on the brakes into turn 1 or into turn 2, even knowing that Carlos had a run on him, and he could have got a bit hot and bothered on the brakes and skittled the pair of them out of the race. But he drove sensibly, he drove maturely, took back the lead after he dropped to about 2 seconds back at one point, and then closed down the gap because he kept his tyres in better condition, and he knew the Ferrari would grain up the fronts, pounced when he needed to, and just drove so maturely. It was like he'd led 20 races before and won 10. But it's such a cruel thing, sport. And the rain came at the most inopportune time, and he made a bad call. But that is Formula One. How many times do we see? You think back to 1995 at Spa, Schumacher stuck it out on dries while everyone else was on the wets. It's hero and zero stuff. If you get it right, you are bang in charge of your own destiny. But if you get it wrong, you can slide down the order very, very quickly. But we should not let that one decision overshadow Lando's performance this weekend. He's taken a maiden pole position with a good call to get onto the slicks at the right time, maximize that car's potential. Then he drove a really mature race, kept it all pretty much pointing the right direction until the point where you simply couldn't drive any longer on slicks. And that can happen to anyone. It can just be a flash shower that catches you out at one corner, and that can happen to even the best. So Lando has been on another planet this season in terms of his performances. Hopefully he doesn't get too disheartened with this. I'm sure he won't. But I don't know if you saw the interview with Sky Sports he did pretty much right after the race. It looked like he shed a few tears already. So he may even be shedding a few more later on. But he'll come back stronger. And all the greats go through something like this. You think like George Russell has gone through something like this. Charles Leclerc with Bahrain 2019 has gone through something like this. They all go through something like this, and they all come out the other side. So I have every confidence in Lando that he'll bounce back. Whether or not he'll win a race this season now is slightly up for debate, but if he keeps performing the way he has been, and he's there for when Max and Lewis inevitably tangle again, then he could be on hand to pick up the pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. And McLaren have really got a good car underneath them.